Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to discuss color and specifically color and how to control color relative to the light and shadow. So basically color temperature. Now we have to understand color of the light. We have to know it and understand it, observe it properly so that we can make a good decision when it comes to the color of the shadow, because as we know, it's typically the inverse. That's one of the laws of color, the rules of color, is that warm light is cool shadow and vice versa. So we're going to begin by quickly looking at some examples and analyzing the light and the color and the temperature, analyzing the shadow, color and temperature, and then we'll do a quick demonstration to see how we can apply some of these techniques and things. And before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my free Insiders Club. Insiders Club members get first access to these weekly live streams, and you also get access to other live events, and you get discounts on courses and programs, along with access to free lessons and other free content available only to subscribers. So all you have to do is go to www.drawwithchris.com, and there you can enter your email and you'll be good to go. So this screen here is a series of photographs, and we are going to analyze the color because most of us do work from photography. You know, you grab pictures from the internet like these are from, or you can take your own pictures. But photography has a unique problem or a unique thing, and that is exposure. And what exposure is the camera. Photography has two parts to it: the photographer, the person, and the camera. Camera is a machine. So the machine can actually make its own interpretations of light and color based on the controls that the operator, the photographer, the artist uses, and that's called exposure controls. So here we have 6 different examples of reference photography, and they all have the same thing in common. All of these photographs have one thing in common. Do you see what it is? Comment below. All of these photographs have one thing in common. Do you see what it is? Comment below if you see what it is. Well, they are all being lit by a quote unquote cool light. They're all being lit by a cool light. What does that mean? Cool means, its temperature of the light is closer to blue. It's not like this orange halogen or colored orange light. And typically, lights you see in typical indoor environments that most of us are in. Maybe you're watching this now. You're in an office, or you're in your home somewhere, or you're in a coffee shop. You're typically being lit in a typical office building type thing, and or a store or coffee shop, and those are most likely fluorescent lights, which tend to be cool, neutral cool, which is in painting is cool. So basically, the light, believe it or not, is the exact same color. It's roughly bluish gray. Believe it or not. I know you may be looking at these and go, what the hell? There's no way there's the same exact color temperature where it is. It is. I'll prove it to you. On this first example here, we have Tom Cruise on the 2 left images. This first image here, he's being lit by an indoor photograph with a neutral light. And you can tell by look at the light on his face. Look at the color of the highlight on his face in this zone. These are big swatches of highlight. They are relatively cool. Now, of course, it looks yellow and orange, but the light itself is cool. And it's made yellow and orange because of exposure. That is something that the photographer did either in the camera using the camera's controls, or what's called post-production after you take the picture using some kind of software, most likely. This photo, next second photo here on the left, right here, if we look at the light, not the highlight rim light in his hair, that's a different light, that's a secondary light source, but the primary light, if we look at the zone right here and highlight on his nose, Look at this little highlight right here. I'm going to zoom in real quick. You see that color temperature? It's almost gray white. And believe it or not, these are most likely almost the exact same studio light. Why does this look yellow and orange? Why does this look more blue and cool and white? It's exposure. So something to be mindful of. These two images here in the middle, they have the exact same light, believe it or not. In fact, you could see it on this image right here on the right, this Ryan Gosling. If you look in the background, see that right there? That is what I was talking about. The fluorescent generic building light, office, coffee shop, store. These are fluorescent lights and they tend to be cool. If you look at big swatches of light here, look at the color and temperature. They're fairly cool, especially on a shirt. On this image here, you can clearly see the highlight. On dark skin, it's tense and he's a bit he's sweaty, so his skin is quite reflective. He's probably in a hot movie studio being lit by hot lights, but you can see the color of the light. It's quite cool, neutral. So it's either overhead fluorescent or some kind of photography fluorescent light, but I am almost 100% sure this is also a fluorescent light. Fluorescent light, fluorescent light. Same exact light, same exact temperature. Now these two images on the right, again, same exact light. Believe it or not, they are both the sun. This is sunlight. Believe it or not, these are both sunlight. Now, sunlight has an interesting property because it can be kind of gray, it can be very blue if it's going through clouds, or it can be quite warm and almost pinkish and purplish when the sun is near the horizon, sunrise, sunset. So the sun has different temperature. These two photos were taken in outdoor daylight, most likely summertime. This is from a website called Earth's World, and it's an American man who takes pictures of people in American carnivals, and they're typically out in the afternoon walking around. As you can see, the very, very strong shadow shape, which shows that it's the sun. One strong dominant light in this scene, both of these scenes, which is the sun. Both these men are outdoors, and you see how that looks almost white, that color of the highlight. And it's also because his shaved hair is so cool. It's blue gray or gray brown. So it looks even more cool. Now this image on the right, you can see some highlight here and some highlight here. Looks very cool. This is quite interesting because it's obviously warmer. It looks more orange, right? More yellow, more orange, more red, obviously. Number one, because it's the person's skin. He just is more tan than this guy. He's just more sunburnt, most likely. Number two is the position of the sun. So this one, the sun is, you can see it's almost overhead. But this one, notice the shape of the shadow. So this is important. If you can see a clear shadow shape like that, you see that? That tells you that the light is a little bit lower, right? You can see the angle. That means as the sun gets closer to the horizon, what happens to the color? Of course, it gets a lot warmer, less bright, but much, much warmer in temperature. So that's why same exact light source, the sun, but a little bit lower, therefore a little bit warmer. So if you're looking at outdoor photography, look at the angle of the shadow. That way you'll know, oh, okay, it's the sun, but I should make my painting a little bit warmer. Essentially, that's what I'm trying to get at here. So as you can see, all of these images have a cool light, but they look so different. One is because of the photographer's exposure, the photographer's choice, or the camera's interpretation of the color. And two, it's also the nature of, in this case, of the sun itself. And then the third thing too to pay attention to is the local color of the object. So obviously, if you're doing portraits or figures and you're doing lighter skinned European skin tones, they're going to generally be cooler in the lights, of course, generally than versus someone of African descent or more ethnic skin tone, darker skin tones. And even if you get skin tones that have color in them, for example, a sunburnt face, you will have to make adjustments. And we'll talk about that, but that's more part of the painting process. What I want to emphasize here is that you really have to pay attention. You have to pay attention, and I do recommend knowing a little bit about photography. I only know that these are the exact, they're essentially the same light, but the colors look so different. It's because of the camera's exposure. I only know that because I thought I bought my own proper camera a few years ago. So now I kind of understand. Oh, okay. You can really take the same subject, the same light, and make very, very different photographs. So when you're working from photograph, pay attention, pay very, very close attention to the color of the light and make good decisions. And then we'll talk about now how we can use the photograph to create certain looks and certain effects and certain color palettes. Okay, what I'm going to do now is a little demonstration. And I'm using Photoshop here, obviously. If you're using Procreate, you could do this exact same thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just fill a color. I'm going to look at my scene and say, okay, what color is it mostly? And what color do I want? So it's obviously mostly pinkish, reddish, oranges, right? It's a very warm thing. The big cool thing is his hat, very warm with the sort of warmish, cool sunlight almost. So I'm just going to drop in a pink and then we'll go from there. And I'm going to use some color dynamics here on my brush. And with digital, it's very easy to adjust. And the color dynamics will give me a little bit of sort of this natural color feeling. And this one's a little too saturated, so I'm going to turn it down. There you go. I just want a bit more. There it is. Kind of want a pinkish orange, but a bit gray so that we could make some decisions. Okay. And of course, the line work. You may notice the line work is super colorful. I just did that just for fun. I can turn it down if it's just for me. It just drives me crazy when it's black and white like that. It's just like oh, I have a higher color tolerance, obviously, so I need to see more color to make these decisions. So let's see there. Let's block in the shadow shape now. What I'm going to do is do a couple different variations of this, and then we'll play with the color. So right now I just need the shape and the layer. So I got the flat, which will be his skin roughly. Let me do his shadow, and that includes his hair. It's like sideburn hairs, kind of. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just color pick the color that I have. I just color picked somewhere. I'm gonna make a slightly darker version, so maybe 15% darker, slightly more saturated, and I'm gonna go to the opposite side of the color wheel. I'm gonna make it a, a purple. I'm just gonna put a purple down, and we'll see. I just need to put something down so that I know what's going on, so I know where I'm at. Locking in his shapes right now, shadow shape. And I'm going to include his little sideburn hair and not the hat. I can simplify it. Out simplified. There you go. The shadow on his shirt. It's roughly the shape that I need. Let's play with the color now, and we'll just see how we're doing with this color here. Here, I'm making it more red, more warm, more neutral. I'm gonna put it right there because what I want is a bit of a neutral feel, a little bit of color, just enough so that we can kind of see and evaluate and play with. So what I'm going to do is paint three different versions. One is as is. We're going to try to look at this and go, okay, I like the colors in this scene. I want to try to describe the colors in this scene in my painting. One, we're going to push it more towards cool. So we're going to exaggerate cooler light, and one, we're going to do the exact opposite and make the light warmer. Just so you can see that it's more about you, how you interpret color. And then, of course, you got to make good, correct decision as you proceed with the color. So let's do that now. Okay. For this first example, I'm going to try to go as is. I'm just going to do a quick color block in and focus mostly on his skin for now. Let's see what we can do here. So I'm analyzing the color. We know that it's a sunlight. We know if you look at the highlight in his nose, it's fairly cool. We can see the color, the shadow, it's fairly warm. That's partly because the environment is bouncing back into him. So he's probably surrounded by other warm things. And the light is cool. So the shadow is going to be warmer. And he's sunburnt, and of course the exposure. So the photographer actually used exposure to bring out the shadow. He could have exposed this or put different exposure controls so that the shadow would have been totally black and neutral and almost no detail. But because he chose to bring out some detail in the shadow in the camera or perhaps in post production, it also affected the color. So that's something to pay attention to working from photographs, understanding what's going on with the exposure and the camera controls. So let me just block in something here. What I'm gonna do, he's basically pink. So I'm just gonna drop in a pink and see what we can see. And of course, he's not this pink at all, although it's close. That's pretty close. I just want to get the average of his skin in light. I'm looking at this and go, okay, what's the average? I know there's lights, midtones, and darks. I'm just making my best guess at the average, and that's pretty close. And then what I want to do is take this same average and now start to add a little bit of gradation, meaning where is it lighter, where is it darker, where is it more gray, where is it cool. So the face is a bit more cool here because of it's the light. So I'm going to take this color that I have, it's right here, just color pick it. We're gonna make it cooler, go more towards the yellow side. Basically, we're at orange, so we need to go inside the color wheel, so we can go either more yellow or more orange. But I'm choosing to go this way. Then I'm gonna go much more gray and a lot brighter. Let's see what that does. Okay, that looks terrible. That looks terrible. So I'm going to use my slider here and adjust it. It's too bright, first of all. It's too bright and too gray. Take this color, make it brighter, less saturated, and a bit more on the blue side. Let's do that. Let's try that. Okay, so that's a little closer. Needs to be a bit more gray and a bit more orange. There it is. That's it. That's basically what I was looking for. I just want a bit of a gradation. I don't want anything, I don't want to render yet. I just wanted a color that can start the process and start my thinking here. This is a very important step because it'll kind of get me to thinking in terms of the movement of the colors. Basically, what I'm trying to do now is describe how the color is moving as it gets to certain areas. Oh, also the nose. As it gets to certain areas, it gets a bit more reddish and brown. So I'm actually going to color pick the shadow color, which I like. Shadow color that I just picked now is pretty close to what I need. Neck is much more saturated and darker. Ear is obviously very red. Like for his ear, I'm going to go really push the color there. Also on his skin, just a little bit there. A little bit too pink now. So just a gradation pass, really. That's all I'm trying to do. And then now let's look at the color of his shadow. And let's take a look at that. And it's on a layer, so I can make an adjustment. And what I want to do is just want to get the overall value relationship first. So I think that's right. So it should be a bit darker. Should be a bit more saturated, maybe. And actually, temperature-wise, hue-wise, I was correct. So that's a pretty nice interpretation, flat. I'm not going to put a gradation in the shadow. I just wanted to show you a very simple block-in trying to do what I see, trying to describe the photograph as it is, the reference as it is. Now let's do another interpretation. Okay, for this version, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the warmth of the light. So we're going to see if we can make him really, really warm. Basically just going to crank up saturation of the halftone. My gradient, I already put down. Push, because what we're seeing is the color of the light. So I'm basically going to exaggerate the color of the light and its saturation. And then the shadow, what I'm going to do is go the opposite direction of the shadow and make it a bit more cool. And I'm going to make it a bit more gray. And there you go. So this is an interpretation of a much warmer light. So this is the exact same photo, exact same reference, exact same light, exact same model, exact same local colors and local values. But I just interpreted it as, okay, I'm going to crank up the warmth and the light. Therefore, I must make some adjustments in the shadow as well. You can see how it's still fairly harmonizing. So let's do one more example. Okay, for this last example, I'm going to push the colors towards the cool. So in fact, I'm going to even start with the flat, that little wash I put down. Let's see if I can just make it straight up more violet. You see already, it looks a little bit cooler already. The base color, of course, that's correct from what we saw, but if I want to adjust it cooler, I can just do this, bring it into the pinks, and turn down the saturation, of course. Because what I'm doing is I'm going to say, all right, what if we had a cooler, bluer light or a cooler, bluer exposure? What would happen to this exact same light and the model? It looks something like this. Gradation. And finally, the shadow color. This time, of course, we got to make it a bit warmer. And there you go. All right, so you see we have three different interpretations here. Let's color pick to see what we have so far. Basically color picking my original palette here. So we got some colors. So these are my three sort of base colors and my shadow flat. So the shadow flat doesn't have variation. This one here in the middle, it's my light halftone, and then super saturated halftone, and then my color of the shadow. This one, my light, halftone, and not so saturated version of the halftone there on his ear because it's been cooled down, and of course the color of the shadow. So that's the base that we have. So now I'm going to drop in a light and a highlight, just sort of block it in so you could see how it would look when we adjust the color temperature. How do we make the highlights work, the lights and highlights? Let's do that in this pass. This first example here, I'm just going to drop in a highlight nose, obviously, his eye, a bit on his chin, his ear. Actually, it's more the light shapes and a little bit under his ear here. And that little bit corner of his eye there. Okay, this is light, so it's two. There we go. Wow, that looks nice. I decided to make it a bit more yellow. And now I'm going to drop in highlight here. little bit on his corner of his eyebrow there. And then I'm going to adjust this brighter, cooler. Adjust the temperature a little bit more back towards the pink, just so it kind of harmonizes what I have here. So that's the first light and highlight pass on this color scheme. Let's do the other two here. Second one, remember we pushed this exaggerated warm, so I'm really going to make the lights very yellow, more saturated. So there it is. That looks pretty good. Let me play with the lights again. They might be a little too dark. Looks pretty good. Highlight looks pretty good. It's the pinkish highlight. Should I make it more yellow? Yeah, it looks pretty good right there. It has a nice pop. Actually, I pulled it a little bit towards blue. So we'll color pick that in a minute so you can see. All right, so that's my second interpretation of a warmer light. Okay, so this is our cool light interpretation. I'm going to turn the highlight off for a minute first. Our cool light interpretation. So I'm going to push this towards the pinks as if he's being lit by a purpley, almost artificial light. Turn it down quite a bit, saturation wise. Come on. Come on. Because a cool light will really push him into the blues, but the blue human beings are orange, skin tones are orange, and then if you push orange towards the blue, you get a gray. So I'm gonna push it towards the gray blue. Then highlight is to, you see how the highlight looks really pink? It's because it is pink, especially relative to what's around it. Now I'm gonna make the highlight a bit blue right there. That looks so nice. That's a little too blue, but it pops temperature wise. So I'm gonna bring that back down a little bit. For my taste, it looks awesome, but I know you may be watching this go, whoa, that's too much of a pop. Okay, color pick and see where we're at. First example, true to the photo. So we have a light, we have a highlight. Look at them together. That looks pretty nice, right? This whole palette looks pretty nice. Second example, push towards the warm. Whole palette looks very similar, but when you see them together, you're like, oh, okay, it looks very different. Finally, the more push towards cool. And there you go. Clearly a much bluer highlights, almost too blue. Okay, we'll close with this today before we do a longer demonstration. It'll make sense once you see. So what we're seeing is the interpretation of the color of the light based on the reference that we have and the exposure that we have. And really what we want to block in or first be able to clearly establish, identify, and to get working, all of these palettes are quite harmonious, meaning they look pretty good together. And in digital, you can see it's a lot easier to do that with color sliders and things, hue saturation. So what we have is this middle set is local color. Local color, that's what LC stands for, is basically the color of your object mostly in the average color of the light. I know that's quite confusing. So the average color of your object, so a human being, he's mostly oranges and pinks, okay? Especially an American, European descent, a human being with a suntan, pinkish oranges and reds, right? So local color, average. And then the three versions are gradations because we never want any color to be flat. So any color mass, any color shape, any color zone, any color shape, we need variation. So these are the variations. You notice they go a little bit lighter and darker and a little bit warmer and cooler as they go. That's interpretation. You can see this one is a bit truer. So it's more pinkish and red. This one's much more orange and more saturated. This one is very gray, 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 gray. gray, 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 because we push the light towards gray. And then what we have here is the shadow. Shadow, of course, we know. And you can see not too much difference if you look at the palettes, but when you see them together, you're like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Clearly on the true to the photo, pinkish gray. When we push our lights towards warm, we have to cool the shadow down, so the shadow is leaning much more towards blue. And this one is a bit crazy, so we actually got to warm up the shadow a little bit. So I exaggerated the saturation a little bit here because we pushed the lights towards blue. And then finally the highlights. We just saw that. Highlight, highlight, highlight. Right here, this last section, you can see the subtle adjustments. They look very different in the palette and they look very different on when you put your highlights next to your base. So that's why it's important to have a base first. Remember, we started with the base, the average, the local color, made those decisions first, and then we could make the shadow decision next, and then the lights and the highlights color we make third. And then once we have that, we're pretty much good to go. Now we can really block in everything that we need color-wise in this painting. So we'll continue with that. And this is just a really, in my opinion, probably the most important step. If you're going to be doing a lot of this little digital paintings, or you're going to be painting from reference, painting from photograph, or shooting your own photographs, you have to understand color first, obviously, warm light, cool shadow, when color goes gray, when it goes more saturated, and you have to understand how to interpret the color of the light. It's very important. And you have to understand that even if you can correctly interpret the light, you're not limited by what you see. You can make your own adjustments. You can make it either warmer, cooler, more saturated, more gray, and so on and so forth. It's really up to you, but the first step is the awareness. You have to be able to look at a reference and go, oh, that's the sun. Oh, that's a halogen street light. Oh, that's an indoor office light. Oh, those are mostly blue. Oh, the light is cool, therefore the shadow is warm. Oh, the shadow looks really blue. Why? Oh, I see. Because he's got an orange spotlight on him. Or, oh, the light's very orange, but the highlight is so blue. Why? You know, those kind of things are really important to understand and interpret first when you're working for photographs. That way you can get the best results.